Hello to all, just letting people join in here. Got a couple minutes and we'll get started. Oh, I love to see that participant number climb. This is wonderful. Up to 100 participants. We're doing pretty good here. All right. Yep. Don't want to keep 100 people waiting. I agree. All right, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Great to have everybody here for our first ever webinar in our series of ecology careers outside academia. I promise we'll find a better title for it sometime in the future, but for now, that's what's going to work. We're so happy to have each and every one of you joining us. I am your host, Aaron Stoller. I currently serve in the industrial sector as an applied ecologist for ExxonMobil Biomedical Sciences. I also serve as senior chair for ESA's public and private sector ecologist section and have served on ESA's membership committee. So again, welcome everybody. The purpose of this webinar is really to share stories and guidance for all job seekers in the world of ecology. Really more than ever, we're seeing a huge abundance of ecology careers that are available in the government, in industry and consulting and education and other nonprofits, NGOs. And ecologists in these positions are leading incredibly fulfilling careers that are helping to translate research into sustainable futures. And these ecologists are also generating novel research. They're doing it in collaboration with partners across sectors and in academia. I know I'm working across multiple sectors and I have lots of research projects ongoing, and I know a lot of my colleagues are in the same boat. Unfortunately, and I do speak from mentoring experience, I was an assistant professor for 5 years, and I mentored hundreds of students, so I can speak from some experience. College and university mentors are not often prepared to guide students along these career paths for a variety of reasons. Sometimes they just don't know about those career paths. And so this webinar series is here to help all types of job seekers, whatever stage you are in your career, whether you're undergraduate, graduate, looking for a change, whatever. And we want to help in finding career opportunities to broaden those networks, perhaps to provide a little bit of hope for those that are struggling to find their niche. And to also help ESA, the Ecological Society, cast a wider and more inclusive net over the professional ecological world. So with that, with me today, I have two guests, including Lara Pomi-Urbat, and she's a senior project manager from GEI Consultants. And I also have Timothy Haas, hopefully, Tim, I said your last name correctly, who is an emeritus associate professor in the Lubar College of Business from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. He has both of them have a very diverse repertoire of experience, and they're here to have a conversation and share those stories. We will have a conversation with both in turn and leave plenty of time at the end for questions. If you have a question, please feel free to enter it into the Q&A box below. You're going to see that there's a chat and a Q&A button below. The chat can be used just to throw out ideas or throw out comments to the people. Please keep it polite. And then the Q&A is for directed questions. If you direct it at one person or the other, please just say who you're talking to, and we'll be sure to collect them at the end and post them to the speakers with as much time as we have. If you do have a question and you need to leave before the end, no worries. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be available for your listening pleasure after its conclusion, whether you want to listen to it on the road or just at the end of the workday, whatever you would like. Also, if you do feel like asking a question in private, please do stay tuned for all of our contact information at the end. You'll be able to see links for our LinkedIn profiles as well as our emails. And really, like I said, the purpose of this is to help people find their job opportunities and their pathways, and we're here to help. I specifically recruited speakers for this webinar who are interested in guiding and helping the ecological community of job seekers. So you should definitely connect with all of us on LinkedIn, send us emails, we'll be here to help. So that all said, I hope I didn't leave out anything. I'm gonna, instead of fumbling over introductions, we're gonna talk with Lara first. So instead of me fumbling over your introduction, Lara, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself. Just tell us about yourself, what your company does, and what your role and responsibilities are briefly, and then we'll get into your career journey.
So thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation. So I'm Lara. I have been in the industry for over 17 years. Currently, I'm senior project manager for GEI Consultants, and we do a lot of ecological consulting, restoration, watershed management, stormwater management, natural resource assessments. So there's a variety of things that we get to do in consulting that I probably never really knew that were opportunities when I first started my career. So that's currently where I am. And so far, I'm loving it. I just made the switch in the past 5 months or so. Um, was previously in the utility industry for about 7.5 years. But yeah, no, I'm happy to be back in the consulting world for sure.
So, for many people that are listening in, I'm pretty sure that there's some confusion about what consulting is. You say you were in the utility world. So, how does that differ? Um, and like, what do you mean by utility world?
Yeah, so environmental consulting is really where agencies and private citizens, even NGOs, they reach out to consultants to help support their project development. We do things such as marsh restoration, we do permitting. I have a project currently where we're helping a land trust kind of organize how they want to manage their parcels, and what are the resources they're looking to protect on the land that they preserve. So consulting really gives you a broad variety of ways to help different people who are looking for that help. And it's kind of why I'm drawn to it. There's a lot of variety and a lot of new things to learn and new challenges that you face every day. I went into the utility world, which is, I worked for a local electric utility. They were looking for people with permitting experience. I had the permitting experience and I thought it would be a great new avenue to pursue. And I definitely learned a lot there. Learned a lot of project management skills, learned a lot about being on the pseudo agency side. The utility I worked for was a contract to an agency. So we had to kind of meet agency standards, but not all of them. So it was a little interesting dynamic there. But and then actually learned a lot about our electrical system and how that works. I never, thought I would have any sort of comprehension about that because I am, I'm not a physics person. I always say I like my, my dirt and my trees. So, but really did learn
Well,
a lot.
let's go back to dirt and trees here because I get the no, I mean I get the sense. So there's a lot of people who don't when you start to talk about agencies and you start to talk about project management in the environmental world, there's a lot of people who kind of get hazy eyes at that because undergraduates and graduate students they're used to doing work out in the field with dirt, with animals, and you think you're going to be doing that forever. And the reality is that eventually we all sort of sit at a computer and aren't doing that or doing a lot of project management. But it's a weird world to enter in, especially when people start talking to you about it when they're in the consulting world, like project management, utilities, and all of these terms. Can you take us back to when you were doing that dirt and animal kind of work when you were in graduate school and how you transitioned and what that transition was like to the world that you're in now?
Yeah. So, I mean, in fairness, I still do a lot of, getting in the dirt work, just probably a lot less than I did when I was in my 20s. But, that it never fully leaves you, I will say. But yeah, I graduated grad school. I was young, I was engaged, we were, looking to start our life. I was looking for my first job. I had applied for, a lot of different things. I had applied at our local cooperative extension. I was even applying for admin jobs just to have a job.
Admin jobs in what? In
Oh, and anything.
Okay.
Literally, I was ready to take anything because I needed to, get my life going, so to speak. And this was also at a time, by the way, when you couldn't be covered under your parents' benefits until you were 26 anymore. So, I had no health insurance. I had minimal salary from my part-time job. It was time for me to get my life going. And I happened to send my resume through a contact I knew to an environmental consulting firm, and they had just picked up a ton of work and were looking for somebody, and they were looking for somebody junior to take on, which was wonderful to me. And I had no idea what I was getting into. I really thought um, I would be doing a lot of the just spending the day in the dirt or, maybe making some maps, and had no concept of regulations, had no real concept even of what did it take to do a wetland delineation. There's a lot of learning that had to occur early on. So I walked out of school with a very different view of what work should be like, seeing all the PhD students around me and the professors and how they did things and how they did research, and walked into industry and definitely was a little bit shell shocked for a while. But that being said, even though I was shell shocked, I mean, I had a lot of fun and I got to do a lot of things that people will never ever get to say they got to do, seen things that people cannot say that they will ever get to see. So, I grew to love, that variety, and I loved that switch from, this very rigid academic theoretical land into the land of practicality, which is what I tend to enjoy anyway.
So let me ask you this. When you were in that switch, in that transition, and you say you're a little shell shocked, right? How did you get over that? I can imagine like a young Lara going into that first interview with a consultant after like finishing up a PhD and then starting to talk about project management. That's sort of where a lot of the shell shock begins for many people transitioning. And even before that, when they start reading job descriptions, those job descriptions are kind of very different from what they might be in the academic world. So how did you get over that to the point where you can now say you appreciate this type of work?
um, there's a little bit of determination that I have. I have that personality where I like to succeed, and I quickly recognized that in order for me to succeed in this, I needed to take the next step. I needed to try something new. I need to even try work, if there wasn't ecological work that was available, try work that wasn't in my niche or my forte, but maybe I had another skill that could support that. You know, and I had this attitude of, what, I have a lot to learn, and there's a lot of ways that I can make myself useful. Um, I also kind of tell the story that I was hired in 2007, and then 2008, the recession happened. And one of my biggest fears in 2008 is that I was going to get laid off because I was the youngest staff member. Um, and I had actually successfully made myself so useful that that didn't happen. So, that's another thing to kind of think about. You might not do ecology 100% of the time when you're in industry. That doesn't mean you don't get to do it, and that doesn't mean that you're not going to do things that you enjoy. Sometimes I like just sitting down and spending an hour making a bunch of maps. There's a little bit of like a cathartic moment in that. So, I think, but again, that determination and that willingness to learn something new and something different, is really what helped me transition and really start to appreciate, working in industry.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of people that are listening in that are just saying, "Oh, I would love to spend all day looking or making maps, and that would be great." And I can appreciate that too. I mean, I have spent some of those days as well. And just from personal experience, I'll say I really resonate with what you said. There's a lot of opportunities to just do a lot of different things, right? When I was doing research as faculty, I was very narrowly focused on a few very cool, very impressive research projects that I enjoyed helping out with, I enjoyed participating in. And now in the industrial sector, I get to work on so many different projects all over the place. and I can sort of dismiss projects that I don't want to do sometimes. You have to get to that stage when you
Yeah.
can start saying, I don't want to do this. Not early on, but it's so interesting. I get to do all of this cool work. So yeah, like, can you just walk us through, the word senior, you're a senior project consultant, correct?
Yes.
The word senior project consultant, I'm finding, has a very different meaning in the world of consulting than it might have in other jobs. So can you walk us through what it means to be a senior versus a junior consultant, and maybe walk us through a little bit of what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I would say in this side of the industry, once you become a senior consultant, you have more experience doing a lot of the projects, and you can help kind of guide and mentor what we consider junior staff. So they start to learn that side of the project. But you also have a component of project management, which is really important. One of the things that I went after when I was in the utility industry was becoming a project management professional. And it's kind of, an underrated and unappreciated skill, but, it's so important to be able to, on a project, control your cost, your schedule, your budget, your scope, client expectations, make sure you have all your stakeholders engaged. You know so being a senior in this industry means that you kind of have that experience. You've done those things before. You've done them either under guidance with someone else. You've flown on your own a little bit, maybe even stumbled a little bit along the way. But you have enough experience to know how to direct the project to achieve whatever the client's outcome is.
So what
uh,
you're saying is that you don't need no project management skills coming into the world. You'll learn those. Is that what you're saying?
you can definitely learn them.
Okay.
I feel like in college, you do get some project management skills. If you get some even basic organizational skills, those things really are helpful. But, the project management skills, particularly the cost, schedule, scope, are things that you can absolutely learn along the way. Those are kind of the harder ones.
I
So,
just I'm just putting myself into the mindset of the undergraduates that I mentored, and as soon as you start saying budget, scope, stakeholder management, I can just immediately tell them. They're like, okay, fine. But when are we going to go out and measure the frogs, or when are we going to go out and put dirt?
right.
And I sympathize entirely with it. But I think what the important take home from what you just said is really, these are skills that you can learn. These are skills that
Absolutely.
you can dig into your skill set that you're learning in college and pull out some of that. I guarantee you that all the
Absolutely.
students have learned some amount of project management, and you can use those to develop that skill set later on, which you're going to have to do in any career that you want to accelerate up the ladder.
Yes.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you. So do go on and tell us a little bit about your day to day responsibilities and workload.
Yeah, so some days I have to gear up to do some field work, and I will head out with typically junior staff members, and we'll go do a site assessment. Now, whether that's delineating a wetland, whether that's assessing the ecological community in a project area, looking for a rare, threatened, endangered species, those are all different things that I would do on a field day. On an office day, there's a little bit of more client management that can happen, interacting with the clients, letting them know, how their project is doing. Is it on schedule? Or am I meeting their deliverables? There's also requests for proposals that come out, and we decide, do we want to try to pursue a particular project? And there's a fair amount of that happens as well. You have to, bid on the project in order to win it and be able to do it. So, a collaboration across the company and even with other companies in order to try to, win a project if we really want it. So there's a fair amount of that. There's always a little bit of the less fun things, checking my budgets, making sure are we on budget. Do I need to request an add-on? Do we need to do a write-off? Is somebody going to come and, peer over my shoulder and say, this is not good. You're not doing well in your budget here and meeting the company standards. But that's part of it too, is kind of keeping tabs on that stuff. Um, and some days it's also being out and looking for opportunities. And there's also some days that, you get some opportunities for networking, just to even meet other people and, talk about their experiences and seeing, can you be an asset to each other? Are there projects that you can team on? Recently just kind of have been teaming up with a surveyor who does, incredible work. I mean, I love a good survey and I love good detail. And he produces the detail that makes me a very happy person who's trying to do a project plan or a permit. Um, you know,
I'm
and you get to
cringing just
know
a
these
little bit.
people.
I love a good survey. I don't know that I would ever hear that statement come out of anybody's mouth. I love a good survey. Sure.
I've seen enough bad surveys that I have a deep appreciation
Yeah.
for really good survey work. Um,
Well, and that's a good point too that you raise. I think my experience is similar in that I never knew what a survey was until I got into the world of government and then in the world of industry. And now that I do it, I'm naturally curious. I think we're all naturally curious as scientists, and I grab a hold of any opportunity that there is to ask, well, how do you do this? What is the correct way of doing this? And usually people are so happy to share their knowledge, and the more knowledge you gain, the more valuable you are to your employer and to all of your clients that are interested in this. Yeah, absolutely. I just love the statement. I love a good survey. Yeah.
yeah, and it actually ties back to some of those skills you learn that you never knew you need to had. I became very proficient in AutoCAD and learned how to do restoration plans in AutoCAD. And it was much more difficult to do if I had, junk base data, which means, not a good survey or, a sketch off a grainy aerial. Than if I had a really good survey to start from and, understood where I was working.
Yeah.
So, it's another way that, kind of those skills that you learn along the way really tie in to meeting your goals.
Yeah. So, I know we're limited on time, and I would love to continue this. I think one of the things that most people are going to ask, what recommendations could you give to somebody who is either starting out and trying to figure out what their career is? Maybe they're a master's student and they're trying to figure out where they should go next. Or maybe there's somebody that is currently working in academia and is looking for a career change. What advice could you give them?
Yeah, a couple of key things always come to mind when we're talking about this, and when I get asked this question. Number one is don't be afraid to try different things. Don't be afraid to learn new skills. People are often capable of more than they realize. And that willingness will really take you places. Um, and don't be disappointed when ecology is not your focus 100% of the time, because sometimes even 50% of the time you still get to do what you love, and to me that's better than doing it 0% of the time. I'm so happy I never got any of those admin jobs out of college, because I wouldn't be doing any sort of ecology right now. And for those that are transitioning out of academia, and maybe you're looking to really get into industry, my recommendation would really to understand what the skills are that, companies are looking for. And I go back to, those project management skills, learning and understanding wetland delineations, learning and understanding state and federal regulations, even local regulations. I could do a whole separate talk on that, but those are really critical in project development, and starting to understand those things is critical to really successful projects. So pursue those certifications, pursue that learning. It might not be in a traditional classroom setting, but you're still learning amazing things along the way.
I'll second that. Those certifications and anything additional you can learn is always very helpful. Great advice. I want to end with the conversation with you before we go to Tim. What is the proudest moment that you have as in your career? Like, what is there something that you can point to that would be inspirational to the people on this call, or just something in general?
Yeah. So believe it or not, my personal proudest moment is when I received my certificate as a certified senior ecologist. To me, that means that I had done the work to to earn it and to really be recognized as somebody who has good ecological knowledge.
Yeah.
And that is something I hold very, very dear. I take that code of ethics to heart. And there have been times that I've been pushed to, try to do things that I would say, no, I am not losing my certification. I have a code of ethics to uphold, and that means a lot to me. So yeah, becoming a certified senior ecologist was really like my personal, shining moment. To me, it was like I made it moment.
No, I love that. That's great. Because really it speaks to the fact that you can still be the ecologist that you would always hope that you would be. When you graduated, you're not departing from ecology as a career. You're still very much an ecologist. You're just doing it differently. And that's so heartwarming, I guess, to a lack of a better word, but to hear that, that's still like your passion. Because I think that a lot of people are scared about leaving that world of research that they kind of experienced in maybe undergraduate labs or undergraduate field work and saying, well, I'm no longer going to be doing pure ecology. And yet you're saying, I am still doing ecology. It's just taking a different form. And that's really great to hear. So thank you very much. If you could stay on the line, there's a lot of questions and we've gotten even more participants, which is great. So I think that you have the ability to answer some questions live if you would like to, because we're definitely not going to get around to answering all the questions at the end. So if you can answer some of them live, that would be great. And in the meantime, Tim, I will welcome you to front and center to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your career history, and oh, and that's great. I just saw from Sandra, she put a link about that ESA certification in the chat, if in case anybody is curious as to what that certification entailed. Yeah, so Tim, why don't you take it away, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got there.
Okay, well, thanks, Aaron, for the invitation to participate in this. Uh, I uh, got an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering. I worked six different engineering jobs, mainly research and development in Los Angeles, before I, at age 30, went back and pursued a PhD in statistics at Colorado State University. While there, I got a research assistantship job in the natural resource uh, uh, NREL, Natural Resource Ecology Laboratory. It's it's well funded, and I was asked to develop spatial statistics algorithms to predict acid rain deposition for the Environmental Protection Agency. During my assistantship, I was flown to Raleigh and I got to meet a lot of EPA managers. And one of my early best moments was when at one time, my methods were the official methods to predict acid rain from the EPA. Uh, I then got involved with the USDA Forest Service while still a graduate student, because I went to a conference and put a poster up on Bayesian belief networks. I come back to NREL, and a Forest Service person from across the street walks into my office and says, "Is there a Tim Haas here?" And I say, "Yes, that's me." And he says, "Well, I want you to develop a Bayesian belief network for how aspen stands in the Rocky Mountains survive or do not survive." That led to a job. Um, Later on, I was approached by another researcher in the Forest Service who had read some of my papers, and he says, "I want you to build me a Bayesian belief network of trout survival in streams in the Pacific Northwest." Um, Later on, as a professor, an associate professor in the School of Business, which I picked up because they needed statistically trained people to teach business statistics. So note, if you get a PhD in one field, there are possibilities to pursue assistant professorships in completely different areas. Um, mostly if you're technically trained. But anyway,
Well, I'll
um,
second that. That's a really good point that I actually want to add something to, because during the last ESA meeting, I met an economist who said to me, I don't know how I'm going to get into ecology. I don't have any of the necessary skills. And I just laughed because I work with natural capital valuation all the time. And I looked at her and I'm like, you absolutely have 100% of the skills that are desirable to a huge number of jobs out there. You just have to recognize how to sell that properly. So I just want to, that's a great point, and I wanted to make sure we emphasize that. Go ahead, please.
so I got interested in socio-ecological systems, and I discovered that there was a big problem in rhino poaching emerging in South Africa, particularly around Kruger National Park. So I applied to a conference and flew down there. Grueling trip, by the way. Uh, and I got to know an ecologist who was working for South African national parks. He introduced me to some security people who were trying to find the people who were doing the poaching. I developed a social network model of the trafficking network in rhino poaching for their horns. And the World Wildlife Fund gave us a grant to cover just my travel. Well, at one point, my colleague down there basically offered me a job with sandparks. And I could have taken that job in a minute because I knew everybody. And I bring this up because both with the Forest Service, the EPA, and sandparks, I had done some free work for them. And I cannot overemphasize how important it is to just step up and say, oh, I'll do a little analysis for you just so that you can look at it. That is a way of getting the interest of a big institution, any institution, private or state. They learn two things about you. One, you're competent. And two, you're willing to go the extra mile. And three, you get to know people. And the way you get a job outside of academia is through networking. That's it's not the only way, but is by far the most effective way.
Yeah, so let's chat about that for just a second, because I want to draw on this point of um, doing work that's a little outside of your comfort zone to gain that network. I don't know so much about the free work that you mentioned. I think that a lot of the consultants that I work with would cringe at that and be like, well, your time is valuable. But I do recognize that maybe you're not as good at doing something as some other people. So you might not charge as much, or you might say, I'll do this for free this time to gain the experience. But I really like what you're saying, that just do things to gain that network experience, which I think is really important. Every student needs to learn how to network. It's a skill that comes natural to some and not so natural to others.
Yes. Yes, the book What Color is Your Parachute, which is now in its 12th edition or something. I read that book when I was 20 years old. And its main point was this: look, skip HR. Find the people in the organization who have the authority to hire. Figure out some way, and the book says, good luck on this one, but you have got to figure out a way to talk to those people directly. That advice is just gold. If you can talk to people who are in a position of some kind of authority and you have something they want, and usually that's technical prowess, a job will just follow. It's but you see the problem with people who are being trained in ecology to offer an opinion, um, they are not trained to think about their own career that is not the how the career of their advisors went. But if you want to break out of the academic game, you have to enter an incredibly diverse world of state agencies, federal agencies, industrial consulting firms, and all of these groups have very different goals about what they're going to be interested in. And somehow you need to learn about what they need and then present yourself as the solution to their problems. They will hire you the next day if you can somehow do that.
So I will. The word emeritus in your title kind of gives away your seniority. So that's where this next question I have is coming from. You know, you talk about networking and you talk about just going past HR and going straight to the people that you're interested with. I I love that. And some people are more comfortable doing that than others. Um, but I do recognize that times have changed a little bit. There's a lot more people in the world. There's a lot more structure to organizations. Even at the universities, there's a lot more structure and people to kind of go through. And so I think that we can both recognize that that kind of networking is probably more intimidating to many now than it ever has been.
Yes.
So in your repertoire of experience, can you speak to that and maybe offer some guidance or assurance to people who are trying to do that networking? Either people that are going to meetings and maybe just afraid to shake hands, which ESA is one of the most approachable conferences that I get to go to, so I don't think anybody should be
Yes.
worried about that. But maybe to more professional conferences, or maybe if you walk into a state agency, what advice can you give to people to help them get over some initial trepidation?
Well, I would leverage being a graduate student. So I think a lot of people tuned in right now are somewhere in their graduate student experience. Well, graduate students have the the opportunity to investigate what sort of research projects are ongoing at their university. Those principal investigators, no harm in sitting down and talking to them. I know you're already funded, but what are you doing? What kinds of people, what kind of agencies are funding you? Um, is there any way I could tag along at a conference that you're going to give a talk at? So there's an opportunity there on your very campus where there are ongoing funded projects that external sources are funding. If you can somehow get to know some of the people who are doing that external funding, that is a good way with PI help to get to know people outside of academia. That happened to me 3 times. And the with the NREL outfit, Natural Resource Ecology Lab, I was the second choice. The first graduate student turned them down. And I was then asked, well, would you be interested in a summer project to develop some statistics? So you need to find opportunities. Well, you need to take advantage of the opportunities that come your way. Um, and at conferences, I've seen with the American Statistical Association, they have a guide that they give young people, and they say, "Now look, networking is new, but what you need to do is take advantage of the very short amount of time you have at the conference and be a little assertive. Track down the names of people from outside academia and ask them if you could have a cup of coffee with them." And that's not natural to a lot of people. I totally understand that. But if you sit down with someone from another agency and you say, I have looked at your work, it looks interesting. Uh, I have some technical skills that I think you might be interested in. Would you have 5 minutes to talk to me? There's nothing wrong with doing that. Senior people are always in the back of their mind looking for new talent. If they don't, they may not say so, but that's one of the jobs of a senior person. And these agencies, these these projects move very fast, and they're composed of teams of people from a wide background, and they're not really interested in publishing journal articles. They're interested in, for example, saving aspen, or why is the trout population crashing in Idaho. They're interested in extremely practical problems that have a short time horizon for the solution. So the world is much different than in academia, where you basically kind of get a grant, you write some papers, and then while you're writing the papers, you're writing your next grant. It's completely different outside of academia. They have real problems that they want to spend a lot of money on to solve, and they need teams of people who can bring expertise to the table to solve those problems. So if your mindset turns into one of solving problems, they will detect that. At Sandparks, when I started talking about how they tracked down the 9/11 terrorists using social network analysis, they were all ears. Could we do that? And I said, you're looking at the guy who can program all that for you. Well, immediately I was given access to extremely confidential criminal intelligence. And I had a super fun time working on this. And I got to know 30 people.
So the the sense that I'm getting really is something that I've kind of career coached a lot of students in that you never know what the employer wants until you start telling them what you have. Um,
Yes.
and so I see a lot of students that look at job opportunities and applications, or they start a conversation with people thinking, I don't fit any of these qualifications, or they're not interested in me. And the sense that I'm getting is that you have not been afraid to tell people what you're doing and what you're interested in. And I have found that in the job market, you find job applications that you sort of fit into, and then you tell them what all else you're interested in, right? What all else you do. And because the world outside of academia is so rapidly focused, or is so focused on rapid problem solving, you never quite know what problem somebody is actually needing at that moment. And so if you tell them what kind of stuff you're doing, the worst they'll say is, I don't have a need for that right now, but I'll keep your
Yeah.
resume on file, which usually means that it gets dusty after a while.
Yeah.
But you never know until you tell them what you have.
Yes. Yes. And technical ability can be applied to so many problems that, well, my colleague down in South Africa was asked, what should students in ecology pursue? And he, being the senior large mammal ecologist for all of South Africa, said, I think you should go back and get a graduate degree, like a master's degree in statistics, which was not what they wanted to hear. But he says, look, the world is becoming more quantitative all the time. I mean, look at machine learning. Now that's yesterday. Now everything is predictive AI. Well, AI is nothing more than giant neural networks. But to talk about a neural network and how to train it, you got to have some technical background of some kind. But
I'm
if you
gonna I'm gonna
can,
pause you and just say, like, I think a lot of people who don't have any clue what about AI and neural networks are probably getting that same hazy eyed as when Lara started talking about stakeholders and profits and budgets.
yes.
But I absolutely agree that you have to. It's useful to kind of have a little bit of knowledge about all this stuff so you can start talking about it. Go ahead.
So in ecology, I totally understand. Lots of people go into it because they want to be out in the field interacting with ecology. Terrific. But the future lies in analysis. And to to not recognize that that's where the world's going is dangerous
Mm.
as far as being able to have a successful career. You need to be able to appreciate that technical ability is going to be a very effective way to get a job. Now, what I'm trying to focus on, because of my experience where I had all these early experiences as a graduate student, I'm focusing on just getting the job in the first place. How you progress in that job is something which, from my background, you can see that I was able to land an academic job and I just stayed. So I'm more focused on getting a job. And one of the ways to get a job outside of academia is to sell yourself as someone who is technically competent and has something technical to offer. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
And the problem in ecology is that a lot of times the statistics courses are viewed as a pain, and that is the wrong attitude.
Mm.
Uh, uh, my colleague pursued a master's at the University of Auckland, Department of Statistics, one of the best in the world. And he was browbeat the whole time there, he told me, is because he was not very good at it. But when he got done, as young researchers got employed at sandparks, he was able to evaluate and guide their work because he had a better background in statistics than most ecologists did. And that helped him rise through the Sandparks Scientific Services group.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I do want to clarify, I don't think that you're meaning to suggest that ecology is just going to be straight up data analytics in the future. There's certainly always going to be the need for the people that go out in the field and collect animals or collect plants or go out into the middle of the tropical rainforest and lead expeditions. And there's certainly going to be room for that. But I do agree with you that having a strong foundation in data and not being scared to approach it, it is a challenge for a lot of students because statistics is unfortunately taught in sort of a humdrum, sort of boring way in a lot of places, and it
Yes,
turns people off. But it is worth it for students to find their interest. Whether that interest might be in machine learning or in artificial intelligence or in statistics or in modeling, it is worth it to have something to put on your resume to say, I have some data analytical skills. So,
yes.
Tim, I want to leave plenty of room for questions here, and I want to
Yeah.
end the conversation with you in the same way that I ended it with Lara. Is what do you view as your most proudest moment in your career that can inspire other people to achieve that?
In I'll put it in the area of these relationships I've had with outside agencies. Two, one, when I mentioned when I was told in front of all these high level academics and EPA managers that my methods would be the official estimates of acid rain in the United States. I was back in about 1992. And then recently, when my social network analysis identified one of the main kingpins in the rhino poaching network at South African national parks, and my methods had predicted the very person that they ended up arresting. I
Mm.
felt that my methodology, my programming, and my interaction with them had actually had a real result. You don't get to be able to say in your career that you actually had a real effect on some important ecological problem very often.
Okay. Um, that's great, Tim. Thank you so much, and thank you to both of the panelists for talking and sharing their stories. Sandra, I want to give you a chance to just do a few announcements about ESA before people run off. So please go ahead and do that, and then we'll do a few questions. And Tim, by the way, while she's doing that, if you can look at some of the questions, and if you want to answer any of them. There was one question that I accidentally hit the button on, and I said, could Aaron please also talk about his job? Maybe in another one, the focus is not on me. I'd be happy to do that another time.
Thanks, Aaron, and thank you, Timothy and Lara. Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra Del Rio, Professional Programs Coordinator at the Ecological Society of America. Thanks for joining us today for this first session of the Ecology Careers Outside of Academia webinar series. We're pleased to announce that the next upcoming sessions dates are October 15, November 7, and December 5. All the webinars will be from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm sharing the relevant links now before I forget, and you can look at them at your own time. I also wanted to share some other professional development opportunities currently available through ESA. We have several webinars lined up as part of the SciComm in the Parks program, also called SKIP, which is sponsored in part by the National Park Service. These events are open to anyone interested, and registration is available for all. And here you see all the upcoming sessions. We also have, and I know we're talking about careers outside of academia, today, but I do want to mention that we also offer webinars for those that are interested in academic positions. The series titled From Application to Negotiation, Your Roadmap to Landing Academic Positions began in May, but there are still 3 more webinars happening in October, and you can register for those as well. And I'd like to mention that ESA's Professional Ecologist Certification Program. For those who might not know, ESA has a certification program. A couple of quick facts: it's been around for over 40 years, and you do not have to be an ESA member to get certified. And you can learn more about this program at esa.org/certification or email cert@esa.org with any questions. Lastly, here are some important ESA announcements. Nominations for ESA awards, fellows, and early career fellows are open. This is a great opportunity to celebrate your mentors, colleagues, peers, and the deadline for nominations is November 7th. And applications are also open for the Excellence in Ecology or EEE scholarships with a deadline of October 28th. And I'll hand it over to you, Aaron.
Great. I will say, for those of you that don't know about the Ecological Society, because we did advertise this pretty far and wide, both on the Ecology listserv as well, the ESA listserv, as well as on LinkedIn and whatnot. So I don't know where you're getting the invitation from. If you're not a member of ESA, or if you've never been to an ESA meeting, I do find that it's one of the most approachable conferences, especially for undergraduates and masters and graduate students, and masters and PhD students. Really, if you just want a gentle introduction into the world of ecology, this is really the place to do it. And you can either be completely inundated during the conference if that's the track that you want, or you can have just a light introduction and hide in the corner, like I probably did during my first conference. So just a FYI, all of the LinkedIn QR codes are on the screen right now, as well as our emails. I'm Aaron, I'm the moderator. Sandra just put all of them in the chat box if you don't want to scan a bajillion QR codes. John and Sandra are the ESA coordinators for this. And then the Ecological Society of America does have a, sorry, I'm looking at one of the texts. I think we can email the links as well. Yeah. The Ecological Society of America does have a listserv called Ecolog that you should definitely subscribe to. And then if you can go to the, no, just keep that on there for a second. All right, so some questions here. I like this one. Would it be more important to join a national society or a state chapter society? I like this because ESA does actually have local chapters, sort of a Mid-Atlantic chapter, and I think an upcoming Midwestern chapter. And then there's a lot of smaller societies out there, smaller than ESA, that people can join. And it was directed to I don't know, actually. So for both of them, so for both of the speakers, do you think that joining a national society like ESA, or maybe something more local, is more relevant today?
So, I think there's value in both. The national societies give you access to people that you normally wouldn't interact with. You tend to, in this industry, work with people that are kind of locally in your area. I work with people kind of across the tri-state area. I'm in New York, but I don't really get to work with people from Florida. But when I go to national conferences, I get to meet with them and, understand what their experiences are. So national societies are great for that. But there's also benefit to your smaller local chapters, because that's where those smaller and more local connections can form. And you can really kind of find those opportunities to collaborate and work together and, learn what other people's strengths are. So to me, they're equally as important.
I think that for someone who's not used to networking and maybe shy, that going to a local chapter more than once might allow you to slowly get to know people without having to be very assertive. And that will teach you some networking skills in a way that's not so painful.
Okay. So one question I had, I love this one. Environmental jobs have a reputation for not being the most lucrative. With the cost of living being so high, do you see the industry moving towards being more sustainable in that regard? I'm going to answer this one briefly. and say, I also had the exact same thought when I entered into graduate school. And when I started getting tenure track offers, I still had that same thought. And then I left academia and found out that environmental jobs actually do pay quite a bit. And they do match the cost of living. I don't know if everyone else has the same exact experience, but I'll let you guys answer that for yourself. Lara?
Yeah, I would actually agree. I think you would be surprised when you're in industry, how the jobs, do match experience and the pay matches experience, and pay matches skill set. So, I mean, everybody starts at the beginning, right? Everybody started off in a entry level job with an entry level salary, but there's definitely opportunity to, make a true and comfortable living, out of being an ecologist.
Uh, I worked for NASA in the 1970s, and the perception was that, oh, you're not going to make any money at NASA relative to being an engineer for a private company. But when I got to NASA, they said, that's the great secret that we love, because once you get on the GS ladder and you perform well and you start getting those GS promotions, those salary promotions, within 5 or 6 years, you're very competitive with the private sector. And USDA Forest Service, EPA, all those guys are on the federal GS ladder. So from a federal standpoint, I know for sure that you will have a competitive salary in 5 to 10 years, but it takes a little longer in the federal government than. But the advantage is, unless there's a RIF, a reduction in force, you've got way more job security than you do in the private world. That's not something to just take lightly when you enter into a 30-year mortgage.
Yeah. So I did see a question from Madison come in about the political climate, and I'm going to avoid that one in this venue here because I don't want to get into political climate in the upcoming election. Although I do think it is relevant. But I do want to combine a couple other questions that I'm seeing, which is how do you network if you're not in graduate school or if you can't afford to go to conferences? It does seem a little daunting. I will throw a pitch in for ESA, not because they're paying me to do it, but because I really do like ESA. They do have a tiered registration level, and it is actually one of the most affordable conferences you can go to if you're not in school or if you don't have anybody supporting you. So definitely look to see what you can do. The flights and hotels can cost a little bit, but there's always kinds of grants to help you out with that. But it is a challenge. It is daunting if you're not in graduate school anymore, if you've left, or if you're in another job. How do you network? Tim, why don't you go ahead?
Um, I do remember, and I believe it is true, that the USDA Forest Service, to take a big agency, they have an ongoing need for field workers, and these positions are strictly temporary. And they're pretty grunt work oriented jobs. However, if you take one of them, you will be working under a permanent member of the scientific staff at USDA Forest Service out of one of their research facilities, and they have about 8 of them scattered across the United States. That is one way to network. It's physical work because you're out there taking data, tramping around in the marshes. But for ecologists, that's fun.
Yeah.
So I'm suggesting, in a nutshell, find some temporary job for an agency or a private consulting firm, and they say, this is only 6 months, and it's just gathering data, and then you're gone. Use that job to talk to people. That's
And use
one
that job
way.
to pay your conference attendance registration
Yes,
too, because they'll
definitely.
do it.
That's a yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a two-step. That's a really good plan.
Well, in the interest of time, Laura, I'm sorry I didn't give you a chance to answer that question, but in the interest of time, I do want to. Can you actually go to the next slide, Sandra, just to let people capture a photo of it? We do have 3 more for the year, 3 more of these sessions coming up with a diversity of people, all from different walks of the ecological career. And we hope to see you guys there. This meeting, like I said, will be recorded and it'll be posted on the ESA website. For those of you that didn't get an answer to your question, I'm going to ask the coordinators to send me the questions. And I'll pass them around to the speakers, and hopefully we can get you some answers as well. And again, please follow us on LinkedIn. We are here to help. We're here to maybe just offer you some comfort and some guidance if you're looking for a career and you're not finding success. We will absolutely be here as to whatever extent we can. And yeah, thank you so much for joining. And thank you to Sandra and John for helping out. And also, by the way, yeah, we'll throw this slide in there. If there's anybody on here who is working outside of academia and would like to share their story, please do sign up. We're always looking for more volunteers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.